The G20 leaders represent 2/3 of the world's population, and the economic issues they discuss impact everyone. But no matter how effective they are, it would be impossible for them to fully advocate for and address the diverse interests they represent. Many specific sectors of society, including workers, women, and young people, have unique concerns and needs that the G20 must take into account. So how does the G20 ensure this happens? Engagement groups are non-governmental and independent entities that represent civil society and the private sector. They are made up of delegates responsible for communicating the challenges their group faces and advocating for policies that will benefit them most. Delegates often outline their perspectives by writing concept papers. Each engagement group then meets regularly to debate and negotiate a unified position, which they present to the G20 in the form of a communiqué. The 2020 G20 officially recognized 8 engagement groups. While the first G20 summit had no engagement groups at all, they have heard outside perspectives since the beginning. The B20 was the first official engagement group of the G20. In 2010, the Business 20 was formed in order to represent the international business community. They've worked closely with the Labor 20, and since the late 2010s, the B20 has focused on building cooperation with other sectors such as academia, industry, and governments. In 2020, they are concentrating on the business challenges presented by digitalization, energy, sustainability, and climate, the future of work and education, integrity and compliance, and trade and investment. People under the age of 30 represent half of the global population. The Youth 20 has empowered this vital voice since it was founded in 2011. Each year, the Y20 pulls together delegates aged 18 to 30 from each G20 nation to discuss youth perspectives with special guests from non-member nations, international organizations, multinational corporations, and charitable foundations. In 2020, they're focusing on future fit, youth empowerment, and global citizenship. The Labor 20 began in 2011. It formed with assistance from the International Trade Union Confederation and the Trade Union Advisory Committee to the OECD. The L20 focuses on issues within the global labor movement, including increasing economic growth via higher wages. They have suggested policies to address inequalities, increase youth employment, and address migrant integration into the workforce. The Think 20 calls itself the Ideas Bank of the G20, as it represents think tanks and policy researchers. 16 nations participated in the initial meeting for the 2012 T20, and more have joined since. Not only do they perform research and make evidence-based recommendations, they also communicate with the public about why issues are important and how they can impact our everyday lives. In 2013, the Civil 20 was formed. The C20 represents the interests of civil society and non-governmental organizations. Their goal is to ensure that the needs of everyday people are represented, not just those of businesses and governments. While they work to hold governments accountable to civilians, the C20 also interprets and explains complex issues to the mass public. In recent years, they've tackled the plight of vulnerable groups, including those living in poverty. In 2020, they're focusing on anti-corruption, climate, energy and sustainability, the digital economy, education, employment and social protection, gender, global health, infrastructure, international financial architecture, local to global, and trade and investment. The Women 20 began at the G20 in Turkey in 2015. W20 delegates come from NGOs, civil society, business, and think tanks. they work to create realistic policy recommendations to promote gender equality and economic opportunities for women. Some specific areas of focus include financial inclusion and reducing both digital and labor gender gaps. In 2020, the W20 is adding inclusive decision-making and entrepreneurship to its agenda. The Science 20 was formed in 2017 out of the national academies of the G20 countries. They provide science-based recommendations to the G20. At their first G20, the S20 addressed chronic and communicable diseases. In 2018, they focused on food security, and in 2019 on marine conservation. This year, in the 2020 S20, representatives will focus on human health, holistic environmental solutions, and digital connectivity in communities by examining the systems-level synergies between these three key priorities. The Urban 20 represents the voices of cities in the G20. First launched in 2018, it has since brought city leaders together to collaborate on solutions for economic and social issues that are particularly important to urban communities. The U20 is unique in that it includes city leaders from non-G20 countries as well as organizations that are focused on urban issues. As the needs of the world evolve, so too will the focus and variety of engagement groups. This ensures the G20 will continue to address the needs of the many.